Hey guys, it's David from mdbootstrap.com, and in this video I'm gonna show you 5 CSS tricks which every web developer should know. Let's get started. Number 1 is CSS Blend mode. You might see a page like this which use these interesting color effects mixed with the image, so I'm gonna show you how you can easily achieve that using CSS. I'm gonna use this photo, which we're gonna use as a background image to our page. So let's add some styles. I'm gonna add our styles to body. So I'm gonna set background image to URL photo. And now let's see how this looks like. So we have our background image. Now let's add some background color to it. I'm gonna use a green one. Okay, now if we check our page, nothing happens because image overrides our color. But let's see what's gonna happen if we're gonna add a blend mode. You can use different modes, and if you're familiar with programs like Photoshop and layers, you might already know what this means. Well, if not, I'm gonna quickly show you, and obviously you can read more about what different blending modes are actually doing. But let's have a look at darken blend mode. Now, as you can see, this blends our background color with our image. And by using different blend modes, we can achieve different effects. So you can use darken, lighter, you can use difference, which it's a little bit crazy, but I personally really like a screen one. And now by changing the color of our background color, we can achieve different effects like the one we've seen on the previous example. Number 2 is clipping. If you ever wonder how this page like Stripe creates these diagonals here, let me show you how you can easily achieve it using CSS. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add new div with an ID background, or actually BG, or we could actually use class. That doesn't really matter. It's just for the sake of this tutorial. We don't need this body anymore. So let's add new selector here. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna set height and width, height and width to 100% to fulfill the entire space. Now I'm gonna add some background color to it. Let's say something like 248, something bluish. And now I'm gonna use a clip path. Now one of the easiest way to use a clip path, to generate the clip path CSS, is to use one of the generators. So you can use you can search for like clip CSS generators, or just directly go to one of those. And I'm gonna go. You can use different shapes, like you can see here, right? So there are a lot of them available, and I'm gonna use, let's say, pentagon, and I'm gonna set it to something like this, and let's give it a little bit curve over here, and this will generate a CSS for us. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna copy this one and paste it into our CSS. What I also gonna do is gonna set this position to absolute and set Z index to -1, so we want this to be our background. And let's see what the result is. And this is how the result looks like. So obviously you can use more complex shapes like you've seen here. So we could do something like that easily, something like this or whatever. Let's create some crazy shape and let's just copy this one and replace, and voila. Another must-have for web developer is animation. CSS allows us to create and animate almost any property which we use in CSS. So let's have a look at this example. I'm going to create a div and we're going to create some colorful animation. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to define a keyframes. Keyframes allows us to define different steps for our animation. So let's define a few steps here for our color change. So I'm gonna start with 0 and let's do it like background. Let's start with violet. Okay, now let me just copy paste this one like that. And change some values here. Let's say this is gonna have 14%. Well, let's do it like 15. Now let's change colors. Okay, and now let's copy paste this one for the sake of compatibility with different browsers, with all browsers. So we're gonna say add WebKit keyframes. Okay, so now we just define keyframes. So let's add some style to our div. So let's give it some height. Let's say 400 pixels with 400 pixels, border 1 solid black, and animation blink, because that's how we called it, time, animation time, and we're gonna define to play it infinitely. Now again, WebKit animation blink 10 seconds infinite, and let's check the result. Oops. So that's how it is. As you can see, we can easily animate almost any property. So starting with color, shape, we can move objects from one place to another. So this is a very important knowledge, as currently we used to use JavaScript for that, but now most of the animation actually happens in pure CSS, which is just more convenient way to do it. The next one isn't actually a trick, but knowledge that you can use different fonts on your website. And if you navigate to fonts.google.com, you're gonna find almost 1,000 different fonts available for you to use for free. So if you navigate there, you can browse different fonts, and if you choose one, you're gonna see a preview of the font. How does it look like using different weight and different style, like italic. For example, here we have like light 300 italic, while here we have a bold. So just pick font you like. Let's say I'm gonna use this one. I'm gonna choose style I like. You can actually use one style, or you can select multiple styles and add them. And then you can use this embed option, which will give you the code you have to use on your page. So I'm gonna use this link. So let's go to our document. I'm gonna paste it, and let's add some paragraph and generate some text. Now the second step is to copy a font family. So let's go to our style and let's paste it to our body, and let's check how it looks like. Voila, our font has changed. Another very interesting option to use in CSS are gradients. So you can generate different kind of gradients using just a CSS. So let's have a look at the example. You already know that you can set a background color to your elements like this, RGB, and then some color, let's say something between green and blue. So like this one, but we can also add a gradient. So we can use different kind of gradients. I'm gonna use a radial one, and we're gonna define that we want to circle shape, and then we will provide two colors. So one's gonna be the same as we used here, and then a color shift, and then second color. Actually, let's add some opacity here to 0, or actually let's leave it for 1 for a moment, and then something more bluish, and then this one 100%, and let's see how does it work actually. And this is our gradient. So there are many properties which you can change here, but don't worry, you don't have to remember all of them. What you can do, you can just use one of the CSS gradient generators like that one, and simply by using these color pickers, you can generate whatever gradient you like. You can also change this color shift, so using this range selector, you can also generate linear gradient like this one. Let me, oh, I thought it's gonna reset to default, but here you can define the angle. So if we're gonna use something like this or that, we can remove number of colors so we can have more. You can use predefined shapes. So yeah, just play with it and see how creative you can be with just a few clicks. So let's check this. Yeah, I think it looks cool. So these were 5 CSS tricks which every web developer should know. Let me know in the comments whether you knew already all of them or not, and what else would you put on this list. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you don't want to miss more videos in the future like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notification. Thanks you, and see you in the next video.